Hello crafty viewers. So for today's project we are making this beautiful gatefold card using the Prima Lavender collection paper and a die set that I got from Scrapbooking Made Simple. So this little belly band holds it closed. Then the gates open up to form a top folding card. You can put your sentiment on the inside or write your note. This has some beautiful blossom colored interior and exterior using the gilding polish from Cosmic Shimmer. I also added a greeting on the front, and you can customize this to be a thank you card or a birthday card or any kind of card, you know, have a good day type card with a little butterfly that came out of the ephemera package. So let's get started. So for today's project, we will be using the butterfly out of the ephemera package. And if you want a walkthrough of what is all contained in that ephemera package, I'll put a link down below in the video to a review of the collection that I did earlier last week. We'll be using this Cosmic Shimmer metallic gilding polish to create that beautiful shine. This is one of a series of dies that form a multi-layered card, and this was just the bonus that came with it, which forms the outside, and this is what we'll be using to create that gatefold. You also need 2 pieces of paper. This is for the blossom colored shimmer paper on the inside, and this is for the greeting on the interior of the card. A strip of vellum. Now I chose on mine to cut a little border along the edge, and you don't need to do that. See, I used a punch and there's just the slightest little border. You could just do it as a strip, and you would want to size the vellum to be the width of your greeting, depending on what kind of greeting that you're using. So mine's 1 7/8 of an inch. I also left it at the full 11 inches because when you wrap it around, it's 8.5 plus at least an extra inch. So I wanted to make sure I had enough paper, so I left it the full 11, and then I'll cut it down as soon as I get the pieces all put together. I thought that the Stampin' Up! Wisteria Wonder actually went very well with this paper. And so I have a sheet of that as the base of the card. We're actually going to use the entire sheet based on how we're going to be cutting it. And then I have this cut up piece of the, I think it was Love Through Communication paper. It had the cut aparts on one side and the roses on the back. Now, this is supposed to be the A side, but I thought that the B side's a lot prettier than the A side. They didn't really have a lot of use for the greetings that they included, so we're going to use this for the back. Okay, let's get started. To begin with, we're going to do some scoring and cutting on the sheet of Wisteria Wonder. The very first thing that we're going to do is score it at 5.5 inches along the long edge. And that will form the fold for where the inside part of the top folding part of the card folds down. Next, we're going to take it and we are going to cut away the 2 wings that would be the wings to the top fold part of the card. Now, we're going to keep the middle 4.25 inches, which means that we need to cut 2 1/8 inch off of each side. However, you want that to be just a little narrower than 4.25 inches. So I'm actually going to take an extra 1/16 of an inch off of each side. So that would be 2 and 3/16 of an inch. And I cut that down to that score mark that we made at 5.5 inches. And then I just take and cut it away on that fold line on either side to remove the two side pieces. And that gives us the two pieces, that gives us the top fold piece, and then the bottom will have the two gatefold pieces. Now the gatefold pieces, we are going to score those at 2 1/4, and you'll notice that there's just a little bit extra from where the 2 1/4 is, which is perfect. That means that the interior part for the top fold is just a little narrower than 4 1/4. So we're going to fold that down and score it across the top, set those aside, and then fold each of the side pieces in for the gatefold, and you'll notice when we do the second side here that they match perfectly. That's very exciting to see that they fold together perfectly in the middle. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use these lattice work gatefold dies, and I have them taped together so that the outside frame is just a little bit, that the interior is offset from the exterior with just a little bit of a gap in between. I had them taped together, but you can't do that because if you run that through the die machine just like I'm doing here, you would cut the entire card, and so you can't do that. So I'm going to tear them apart, and there we have them now separated. Now the important thing is that for some reason these are a little narrower than 2 1/8, and I learned that on the first card. So here I'm actually positioning them just a little bit off the edge of the side of the card so that you can feel where the cutting edge catches on the corner of the card, both along the side and along the bottom. Now the first card that I made, the gates actually didn't meet and touch together in the middle for some reason. So for this one I'm actually adhering them down so that the gatefold pieces are as wide apart as possible so that when you fold it back together they touch in the middle. So here you can see, now that it's gone through the die cut machine, that they actually do touch right in the middle. That die on the outer edge does not have a cutting edge, it's just a scoring edge, but because we've already scored the card, it's not going to be used as a score. So to create the interior of the gatefolds, which is the blossom color with the gilding polish, I use some of the Cosmic Shimmer gilding polish and apply it liberally to a sheet of cardstock that is 4 1/4 by 5.5, because you need it to be large enough to fit the same size as the inside of your gatefold pieces. But because you see it on both sides, look how pretty that shimmer is. I couldn't get rid of that spot in the middle. I don't know, every time I've used it on large areas I get a big spot like that. You can see it there. Can't really see it in the finished product, but because it's behind, that side's going to be behind the lattice. But because you see this shimmer card on both sides, you actually have to apply it to both the front and the back. And that's what I'm doing here. And I made sure that there was a nice liberal coating on it, that it was smooth, and it seemed to smooth out better if after you go around in circles that you run back and forth in straight lines with it. So now that that's dried, I'm going to take that piece and I'm going to cut that with the outer edges of those dies. And you'll notice that they're just a little bit larger than the lattice gatefolds. And so I trimmed down the edges a little bit, about 1/8 of an inch along the long edge and 1/8 of an inch along the bottom, to make sure that they fit without showing on the outside. I'm going to adhere those down with some glue along that, it's about 1/4 inch frame around the outside of the lattice work. There we go. Now fold the top fold part down, and we are going to adhere the pattern paper. This is the B side of the Communication Through Love individual sheet of cut-aparts, and it's just a beautiful rose pattern. The B side on this sheet does not have any of the gold foil, but that's okay. And I cut it a little bit smaller so that I could have 1/8 of an inch reveal all around, and so that would be 1/4 inch smaller than 4 1/4 minus 1/16. And I also adhere a sheet of white cardstock on the inside, cut to that same size, and that's where you could put your sentiment. Now the next thing that I'm going to work on is the belly band. And for the belly band, I found a happy birthday greeting that goes most of the way across. And here I want to mark where the folds are going to be to fold around the edge of the card, and to find the middle of the 4 1/4 inches, so that's where I know where to stamp my happy birthday wish. I also want to make sure on the back side that I have enough room and enough overlap. So I didn't cut, this is a full 11 inches across. I didn't cut anything down because I wanted to make sure that I had enough overlap on the back, and that way I could cut it when I was done later on. Now I also marked the middle, and here you can see where I'm pointing out that there's actually a little mark on my punch, and I lined that mark on the punch up with the middle mark that I made on the vellum, and that way I can center it across where the front of the card is going to be and get that so that I have it centered on the sheet, so then when I fold it around I have it evenly distributed across the edge. I'm going to run it through my trimmer and trim off those extra edges. That will be the part that folds around the back, and then I'm also going to trim it and cut it down so that there's about 7/8 of an inch where I'm going to stamp the greeting above where the decorative punched part is. This card is pretty straightforward to put together, and actually the belly band was one of the more time-consuming pieces to try to work out. I'm going to stamp my greeting, the happy birthday greeting, with some VersaFine Imperial Purple ink, and on the vellum it didn't quite come out as dark as I would have liked it. So I probably would have chosen a different ink and then just stamped a second time in my MISTI over it with some Versamark and embossed it that way, rather than just using the VersaFine and embossing it. Here you can see I'm lining it up in the MISTI so that it falls where my stamp is going to be. And since it's nice and long, I have lots of space for my magnets, and I stamp it up with the VersaFine. I then use some clear embossing powder and go over that with the embossing powder. I should have probably used my powder tool, and I didn't, but on the vellum, if there were any extra little pieces that were left over, you don't really notice it. Sorry, you probably hear my 2 dogs fighting in the background. They have a lot of fun together. Now, to adhere the vellum, I got this really nifty product by the people that make glue dots. And it's glue dots for vellum, and you don't see it at all once it's adhered together. So I make a final measurement to make sure that I have enough overlap, and then I actually cut the piece of vellum dots, because if I don't, because you can't see them, you'll never know what part was used and what part wasn't used. So I actually cut them off and fold it down and adhere it. And here you can see, you can't tell at all that there's any adhesive on that. So the product works really well. Now the last piece I have is the butterfly, and I'm just going to adhere him onto the vellum with a little regular glue dot. And there's our final card. If you like this video, please subscribe so that you can be notified of more. I'm going to have several more different projects using this Prima Lavender collection. And give us a thumbs up and share on all of your social media sites. We appreciate you watching today, and have a great day. Happy crafting!